Hello everyone and welcome back to my regular office here in Nixa. I have returned. I wanted to address a couple of things in this video. First of all, of course, I am going to finish off the lecture that we started talking about on Tuesday, particularly focusing on the Roman quintillion. And it's funny because I went through and Google searched, sometimes I'll do this, I Google searched what some sort of shorter, pithier Google websites say about quintillion. And the one thing I noticed is that they don't get it. There are times, I think you might remember me saying this, don't Google answers to the exam because they might not be correct, right? And you'll say, oh, well, they appeared on this website, it's a credible website, or whatever. While that may be true, it is not, that does not mean that they are correct. More importantly, the education you're getting here is based on my reading of all of the context of these works. And so sometimes I'll see them say something like, Plato loved rhetoric, and I'm like, no, that's not true. What did you do? Read Phaedrus, completely misunderstand it? I'm not really sure where those conclusions come from. So every now and then I like to remind myself that there is a reason why I can say to you that there is a difference between what a Google search might get you and the answer that we're looking for on our exams and the practices that we're looking for you to implement in your paper writing. With that said, let me talk to you briefly about grades. Your paper grades are supposed to be up, but from my understanding, they are not. And it's possible there's just like a button I have to click or something in Brightspace to allow you to view your grades. So I'm going to go through that hopefully today and figure out what the hey is going on. And hopefully I'll have that resolved by tomorrow at the latest. The other thing that's coming up tomorrow is your first exam. Unless I am completely mistaken, I have it running through all of next week. That sounds about right to me. I don't know if that sounds right to you on the schedule. So what that means is it is going to be made available to you tomorrow, and I will leave it up for the entire week. So until next Friday, which I believe is the 28th, which I believe is when I said it was due. And I'm double checking myself just to make sure. And of course I can't see a thing because I'm old. So yes, in week 4, oh wow, I don't have it on here. I don't have your exams on here. I don't know how that happened, but it's in the middle of the term. I have paper 1 due by Friday, June 28th. So I guess I just have here that I will talk to you about the exams. So I only say there will be 2 of them, worth 150 points each for a total of 300. That is still accurate. And what I do is I give you an entire week to take the exam. The exam is open note, open lecture, open whatever. Obviously, you take it at your convenience. You can take as long as you like. Most people do find that if they've been reading the material and they've been watching the lectures, that it doesn't take them more than an hour to take the exam, which is about what it would take you if you were seated in the course. So you can take it around your schedule. I want to emphasize this. The test will be available from this Friday until next Friday, okay? From this Friday until next Friday. At some point in those 7 days, it's my hope that you can find an hour or 2 or however long it will take you to sit down and take this exam. And because it's open note and open lecture and open everything, I always expect that you all will get a near perfect score, if not perfect. So I'm not worried about that. Now, will you? Not likely. And here's why. We don't always absorb the information that we need to absorb. I don't always teach it well enough, and that's something that will come out through the exams, and that's something I take into consideration not only for your grade, but for the next time that I teach the course, so I learn as well as you do. In addition, there are times when people just simply don't pay attention to the questions and answer all of the question. So the best advice I can give you is as follows. This exam is going to cover in depth the classical Greeks and the classical Romans, and I believe that's it. Yes. And then I don't like to put the medieval ages on a test that I haven't given to you yet. So yeah, we're not going to put the medieval period on there. That will go on the final exam. So just for this exam, exam 1, week 1, 2, and 3, all of that is open to be on the exam. So hopefully you've been reading, or you've been skimming, or you've been following along on my lectures, or hopefully both. Maybe you've been taking notes. All of that will make your exam that much easier for you. So are the answers there? Yeah. What do I want you to do? I want you to be able to find them. I want you to be able to tell me them. I want you to be able to be conversant in rhetorical theory enough that it becomes useful to you when you go out into the world. So that's why these exams are the way they are. I'm just checking to make sure that you're reading, that you're getting the lectures, and that what I am teaching is what you all are receiving. There have been one or two questions over the course of the past, how long have I been here? 17, 18 years, that I have completely changed, either the way I teach it, or I've taken it off of my exams completely, because enough students got it wrong that clearly it wasn't you all, it was me, or it was the material. So it does help me understand how I'm teaching you, whether or not you're getting the idea or not. And what I really love is when people will say to me, well, I got this question wrong because, it wasn't there in the material. Okay, well, everybody else got it right. So clearly it's in the material, right? And that's not me, that's you. On the other hand, if pretty much, I usually use an 80%. If 80% of the tests come back and that one question is wrong, I have to do something about that, because that literally means that probably the information wasn't available to you. And then, so what I will do is I will put that up this week. You will have all the time you want to take it. It does need to be done by Friday, June 28th at 11:59 p.m. So make sure you take the exam before then. Even if you wait until the night before, that's fine. Just take it before that time and give yourself enough time to take the exam. Now, hopefully nobody has a major vacation planned or whatnot, but since this is a summer course, it's only 8 weeks, it would be my anticipation that even if you do, hopefully you can find a way around that to take the exam based on that kind of availability. Why do I give this kind of availability? Because the exam is just to make sure that I am communicating what I need to be communicating and that you are hearing what you need to be hearing. That's it. That's all I want to know about. So I want to know if you can find the answer, and the correct answer, by the way, based on the information you're receiving in this course. So that's why the exams are the way they are. You only have one shot at taking the exam, but you could take it, you could take however long you want. So you could always start the exam on Tuesday at 3 o'clock and go through part of it and then come back to it on Wednesday afternoon. Just don't close it out and save it, because that will send it to me. You don't want to do that. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to take the exam over the amount of time that it takes you to do it. I don't want to put a lot of restriction on that. So if there's any questions about that, feel free to pop me a line and let me know. And then last but not least, the exam is going to be a series of questions, usually between like 12 and 20 questions. They are all either in multiple choice or short answer format, any mix of those two. I will never ask for an essay or a paragraph. Yes, you can use bullet points. Yes, you can use lists. All I say is make sure you pay attention to the question and answer the whole question. I can't emphasize this enough, okay? All right, so that's your exam. It will be up tomorrow, but you don't even have to look at it until next week if you don't want to. If you're one of those go-getters who's like, I want to take this exam right now, feel free. That is entirely up to you. All right? Questions, comments, concerns, send them my way. All right, let's finish up the Roman Empire, okay? Because this is where we're going to stop on what's going to be put on the exam for tomorrow. So you will have the last 3 weeks on your exam. You do need to pay attention to not like the nitty-gritty, what year did this happen, or what page number did somebody say this. I don't do that. I'm not looking to trick you. I want to know what you know. I don't want to know what you don't know. Which also implies that if you don't know an answer and you can't seem to find said answer, writing a bunch of stuff is not going to be helpful because you're only demonstrating to me what you don't know. But if you write the stuff, and you know, I've had people even email me and they'll say, hey, I was just looking at this question and this is what I'm looking at. Am I looking at the right thing? I will answer that question for you. I will tell you, yes, you are looking in the right direction, or no, we need to move over to a different direction. And then generally I'll give you a hint. Why? Because this is how learning occurs, okay? So let's finish up part 2 of our exploration of classical Roman rhetoric. So between Cicero, who wanted to find the perfect orator, but not really, Cicero was somewhere between Aristotle and Quintilian. Quintilian was searching for the perfect orator, whereas Aristotle was trying to produce good philosophers and practitioners of rhetoric. So really Cicero lies between those two. A lot of what we hear that's been handed down by oral tradition, and if Quintilian is to be believed, Cicero was the greatest rhetorician of all time. Now, I don't know how we can say that, seeing as it's been 2,400 years since then, but, each to his own opinion, and maybe he was. We don't have a record of that. There's no way for us to really know, correct? So we just have to deal with what we have access to. And it's possible that he was. But what we do know is that Cicero wrote the textbook for public speaking, essentially. We know that. I've said that to you before. So what is it that Quintilian could possibly provide? And what makes his work different from Cicero? Well, Cicero, as we discussed, lived about 200 years before Quintilian. And he lived during the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic fell. And some people would say that the day that the Roman Republic fell was the day that rhetoric died, the day that Cicero died. Cicero was accused of a lot of things. And most of the time they put it under the sort of idea of corrupting the youth. The idea that you're teaching them something that they should not know. By the way, this debate goes on today. I am constantly under a barrage of attacks here in the Nixa School District for wanting students to have access to all of the books that the library provides for them, that experts who understand how to curate a library for high school students, what they've chosen, that we shouldn't be challenging that because we're not experts in that area, they are. But some people will tell you that what I'm doing and what my peers are doing who are fighting for intellectual freedom is that we are corrupting the youth. We are teaching them DEI. We are teaching them CRT. We are teaching them to be gay. Yes, one of my friends has publicly been called a pedophile. Another one has been called a groomer. These are the same accusations that Socrates fought with, that Socrates fought with, that Cicero fought with. But the problem was during the Roman era, remember that relationship between rhetoric and power was most important. So what Cicero might have been doing to the children wasn't nearly as important as what he was doing to the power structure. And here's why. Obviously, in order to practice rhetoric, you need a more decentralized government. Well, what started to happen towards the end of Cicero's life? Well, there was a queen who was very influential named Cleopatra. She plays a role in this. There was Caesar. He plays a role in this. There was Brutus. He plays a role in this. Antony. He plays a role in this. And Cicero plays a role in this. And Cleopatra was just, I don't know if she was necessarily sleeping with everybody, but she was definitely seducing people into her way of thinking. And she was able to convince Caesar and Antony that threats to their power needed to be removed. And what did she see as a threat to their power? Well, Cicero. Cicero was a threat to their power because he wanted to empower citizens, remember. So she sort of persuaded them to pay attention to what Cicero was doing. And if you read anything, you know that they took Cicero. We don't know how they killed him, but we do know that they took his hands and his tongue off of his body and hung them, depending on which interpretation you read, on sort of the gates to the city or above the what did they call it? The Roman Senate, excuse me, the building where they met for the Senate. They nailed them to one of those two as a warning that if you try to convince people or teach them how to practice rhetoric, you will be killed. And in that moment, the message was very strongly sent, because where did Cicero's power lie? In his tongue and in his hands, where he was able to inspire others and persuade them to action. So they felt those were his power centers, and they took them. We don't really know much else. I hope he was dead before they did that to him. I'm assuming a lot of us would. But we don't have any indication of how that happened. So that's just an interesting point of fact. Now, if you want to look at the historically based storyline for that, that's the historically based storyline. If you want the more soap opera-ish version, I can give you that, and that is that Cleopatra saw that, Cicero was a threat to power, particularly hers, as she wanted to take Rome. And she was trying to do it in her own way, which was brilliant, by the way. And so she told Antony, I want the head of Cicero. We need to make an example of him and show the people that they do not have power, no matter what he said. That's the more soap operatic version. And, I kind of like it, because Cleopatra was like, listen, I can see into the future here what's happening, and I want you to remain in power because I control you, which means I'll control the power. So you need to kill that dude. And I don't know if that's exactly how that happened. None of us will ever really know, but I do kind of like that version of the story. The point of the story is the same, right? That there was a threat to the power of, at the time, Caesar and Antony and Brutus, and they had to kill Cicero in order to maintain their power. Thus, the reason why I told you at the beginning of last lecture that the relationship between power and rhetoric were so important, and understanding that decentralized governments, decentralized powers have to deal with the general public needing an understanding of rhetoric, whereas very centralized powers, you don't need your people to understand the rhetoric. Understand rhetoric. In fact, you don't want them to, because then they'll do things like critically think about what you're doing. And Lord knows, one of the worst things I do in life, according to a lot of people in my immediate area, I don't know about the country or anything, I don't think most people feel this way, but definitely in Nixa, my teaching of critical thinking, my thought process that exposure to more information, to more experiences, educational opportunities, such as books and plays and music and marginalized groups being brought in and giving these opportunities to children that come from lesser privileged homes, that is corrupting the youth. Okay, I'm just lucky I haven't had to drink hemlock or get a modified version of crucifixion or whatever it is that they did during the Roman times. I think we know that they crucified people, and I think that Cicero was crucified in a similar way, to prove where your power lies. They had to, if you are a Christian and you follow that way of thinking, why did they kill Jesus Christ? He had too much power. What was his power? His power was the ability to convince people to follow him, to do things his way. And the Holy Roman Empire did not like that very much. Okay, so, or the Roman Empire, excuse me. And so that does lead us then to those 200 years between Cicero and Quintilian. And what we have in there is not just the birth of Christ, because that didn't instantaneously change the world or anything like that. But what we did have was the fall of the Roman Republic, and therefore it needed to establish a new type of government, and that type of government was the empire. So along comes Quintilian, who wants to do exactly what Cicero did, thinks he's the greatest orator of all times, and wants to teach people how to be that kind of orator. He even says, I want to produce the most perfect orators. And there's a few things we have to do in order to do that. Well, your first question is, wait a minute, Quintilian, Cicero, I don't know if you were watching or, reading about it because you're 200 years late, but they killed that guy, right? And so what did Quintilian do? Quintilian took all of the kids, the students from the kings and queens and the high up, or well, I should say kings and queens, from the senators and from the emperor and the rich people, and he pulled them together and taught them under the guise of, I'm going to teach your children how to maintain their power through this practice. And I'm going to teach them to teach other people how to maintain their power. And so what's fascinating about Quintilian is that we often say he wrote the teacher's textbook, right? The teacher's edition of the textbook. So Cicero is the public speaking textbook. Quintilian is the teacher's edition that has all the extra notations of how this can work for you rather than against you, as was perceived. And that is how he got away with writing what he did during the Roman Empire. Now, was that trickery? I don't know if it's trickery or just a really good marketing plan, right? And it kept him alive. And he was able to write several great works. Of course, for us, the biggest one is the Institutio de Oratorium, or the institution of being an orator. So this institution of being an orator includes a lot of things. Definitely the 5 canons of rhetoric, as Cicero discussed them. Definitely that idea of style. Definitely choosing the right topic for your audience. Definitely starting your education sooner rather than later. But there is one major difference from Quintilian that is extremely important. and that is this. His definition of the perfect orator. And I'm saying orator, and I'm assuming people understand what I mean. I shouldn't do that. An orator is essentially the speaker. The practice of oratory is standing up and giving a speech with a particular goal and being able to do that well. So we're talking about a perfect speaker. According to Quintilian, and this is important, according to